One, live.
All right, today is August 8th. We will call this regular Oscoda Township Board meeting to order at 7:10. We will start with the Pledge of Allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, if we could start with roll call, please.
Mr. Cummings? Here. Ms. McGuire?
Here.
Mr. Spencer?
Here.
Mr. Palmer?
Here.
Mr. Sutton here. Mr. Wusterbarth?
Present.
Ms. Richards?
Here. Do we have any agenda additions this evening, Tammy? No. Okay, there are no agenda additions. Okay, then moving on, we do have a presentation this evening from our auditor. Hello?
Good evening. I'd like to thank the board for allowing me to be here. I do apologize. I was early. I was at the Township Hall, unfortunately, which did us no good. My name is Joe Verlin. I am with Gabriel Company, and I would like to thank the Township staff. It was everybody did a wonderful job providing us with the information that we needed in order to be able to perform the audit. We were provided a set of financial statements with revenues, expenditures, assets, and liabilities. We were able to work with various financial institutions to confirm and verify the numbers that were provided to us, as well as the state of Michigan, the county, various other institutions to get comfortable with the numbers that were provided to us. I'm not going to go through the entire audit report. Hopefully that's not upsetting to anybody. I'm just going to cover the financial highlights. But what matters more than anything else in this entire audit report can be found on page 1 of the printed copy of the report. This is where we see the opinion on your financial statements. And slightly different format this year. There were new auditing standards issued during 2021, which if you compare this year's report to last year's report, the format of the letter looks a little bit different, but the content is essentially the same. Second paragraph down, we wrote, in our opinion, the financial statements present fairly, in all material respects, the financial condition of the township as of December 31st, 2021. I always explain it as being a clean opinion on your financial statements. This is the gold standard in terms of an opinion on your financial statements. According to the American Institute of Certified Public Accountants, they refer to it as an unmodified opinion. It doesn't sound as flattering, so it just makes more sense to refer to it as a clean opinion. Basically, it means that your controls are adequately designed and operating effectively to allow you, the township, to provide accurate, verifiable financial statements as part of the audit process. It means something to get a clean opinion on your financial statements, but always should be your goal to have a clean opinion on your financials. The next section of the report that I take readers through starts on page 5. And this is the first page of management's discussion and analysis. And this is essentially the Cliff Note version of the entire audit. Here we get to see some financial highlights. We can see 2-year comparative data just to give readers an idea of some of the trends that the township is showing in its revenues, expenses, assets, and liabilities. You get a 2-year comparison of it, as well as a narrative explaining reasons for significant changes in your finances during the past 2 years. So starting with the financial highlights, that first bullet point, this is a theoretical number, hypothetical number. We see that the net position of the township is $31,816,386. What that means is if the township sold all of your assets, paid all of your liabilities, there'd be about $31.8 million left over. Now, this is a very long-term outlook on your finances. Again, theoretical, obviously, the township has no intention of doing that, but we do like to at least see how much of that is unrestricted. The $31 million includes all your infrastructure, buildings, vehicles, things of that nature, much of which is obviously not spendable. When we back off the non-spendable and the restricted amounts, we get $10.6 million of unrestricted net position. And that's a better representation of what your true liquidity was as of December 31st. And that's across all of the funds of the township, not just your general fund. Second bullet point down, now we see that your net position increased by $844,097. Now, if a reader of the financial statements were to ask the township, are we better off financially at December 31st, 2021 compared to 2020? The answer to that question is yes. Your revenues exceeded your expenses by $844,000. In the corporate world, we would call this net income. We'd like to see, the net position is kind of a difficult number sometimes to understand, but the fact that it's increasing means that the township is operating at a sustainable level. And the financial condition of the township improved during 2021. Third bullet point down, now we're talking just about the governmental funds of the township. And on fund accounting, we're looking at what are the immediate resources compared to the immediate obligations of the township. And we can see that your total fund balances came in at $7,066,850, which was an increase of $932,924. When you see an increase in fund balance, this is kind of cash basis accounting, checkbook accounting. So basically, at the end of the year, you had $932,000 of more resources, most notably cash, compared to what you had at the beginning of the year. So the long-term focus, the accrual basis of accounting, $844,000 increase in your net position. On the fund basis, the fund balance, cash basis of accounting, we see a $932,924 increase in your fund balance as well. And then that last bullet point, now we're looking just at the unassigned fund balance of the township's general fund, which came in at $3,093,927. So now we're looking at the most important fund of the township. We're backing off anything that's earmarked or restricted for specific purposes. And this shows us approximately how much the township has at its disposal to cover the day-to-day cost of running the township. That's available for wages, utilities, supplies, things of that nature, about $3.1 million. And when we divide that by the general fund's annualized expenditures and transfers out, you've got about 104%. So basically, you've got about 1 year's worth of reserves sitting in your unassigned fund balance. Very typical for our townships. We work with about 50 townships across the state of Michigan. Not too much, not too little. Very healthy, stable financial condition in your general fund as of December 31st, 2021. I'm sorry, did I see a question? No, okay. Now if we go to page 8, we get a look at the comparative assets and liabilities for the township during 2021 and 2020. And I'm going to focus on the very last two columns, total primary government, which includes all funds of the township. And the first item I wanted to point out here is the very top row, your cash and investments. As of December 31st, 2021, the second to last column shows $10.5 million of cash and investments. And that compares to $9.4 million as of December 31st, 2020. So about $1 million increase in your cash and investments is always nice to see cash and investments trending in the right direction. A lot of that has to do with the increase in net position that we talked about already. If you look about 7, 8 rows down from there, you can see that the capital assets not being depreciated increased. They were $5.87 million as of December 31st, 2020, increased up to $10.2 million as of December 31st, 2021. The biggest reason for that were the water and sewer system improvement projects. So there's a significant amount of infrastructure that has been invested in, but not placed in service yet as of December 31st, 2021, thus the large increase in your capital assets not being depreciated. If we look about halfway down the page, we can see that the unearned revenue increased. December 31st, 2020, your unearned revenues came in at $108,100. That number increased up to $443,408. The biggest reason for that was the township received your first installment of your ARPA funds during 2021, I'm sorry. And they're sitting in your general fund, available to be expended over the course of the next 3 years on various expenditures as the board approves. So the funds are there. You've received the funds, you have the cash sitting in your bank account, but we recognize the revenue when those underlying expenditures happen. And then your net pension liability, which is about another 7, 8 rows down from there in the non-current liability section. As of December 31st, 2020, the township had $1.856 million of an unfunded net pension liability. That number improved to about $1.78 million, primarily because of the strong market returns during 2021. So we're seeing a reduction in your net pension liability. That number's coming down over the course of the next 18 years. Eventually, that net pension liability is going to be fully funded as the township continues to make your annual required contributions into the MERS Trust. Continuing on, if we go down to page 9, we get a look at the comparative revenues and expenses for the township for the last 2 years. And just wanted to point out here that If you look 3 rows down, again, the very last 2 columns, we can see that your capital grants and contributions were $1,018,900 in 2020. That number decreased down to $212,868 in 2021, mainly because the township received a $1 million one-time grant in 2020 to use for your water and sewer projects. That did not recur in 2021. That just has to do with the timing of projects and grant funding, things of that nature. So that was the biggest reason for the overall decrease in the township's revenues in 2021. You can see about 1/3 of the way down, $8.229 million of total revenues compared to just over $9 million in 2020. Then if you look 3 rows up from the bottom, in 2020, you can see that the change in that position was a positive $1.65 million in 2020. Again, we would think of that as being net income in the corporate world compared to $844,097 in 2021. And again, the biggest reason for that was the one-time grant in 2020 of $1 million, which did not recur in 2021. However, you do have back-to-back consecutive years of increasing net position, which is certainly a healthy sign, especially with all the uncertainties that local units have been dealing with COVID. Just a few more pages. If you go now to page 16, we get a look at the comparative balance sheet, or the balance sheets for the township's funds. And we've talked already about the general fund. So 3 rows up from the bottom, 4 rows up from the bottom. In the very first column, we can see the unassigned fund balance for your general fund came in at $3,093,927. And if you look across all the funds of the township, every fund has a positive fund balance. So not only is your general fund performing well, all the other funds of the township have positive fund balances. In addition to the general fund, a lot of our townships have 1 or 2 funds with deficit balances, but no such thing as everything. All of your funds are showing positive fund balances at December 31st, 2021. If you go now 2 more pages to page 18, similarly, we see a schedule, your fund financial statements, your revenues and expenditures, and your increase or decrease in fund balance. First column is your general fund. You can see that the general fund had revenues in excess of expenditures by $677,507 during 2021. If we go all the way to the very last column, we can see all the governmental funds of the township had a net increase in fund balances of $932,924. So your general fund did well, in addition to all the other governmental funds of the township. If you go now to page 22, we get a look at the statement of cash flows. This is for your business type funds, which is the old Orchard Park water and sewer funds. The very top section shows that the net cash provided by operating activities, these are your day-to-day revenues compared to your day-to-day cost of running those business type funds. You can see they generated positive cash flows of just over $1.28 million during 2021, which is good. But if you look about 2/3 of the way down, you can see that the net cash used by capital and related financing activities was a consumption of $1.56 million, which is typical. A lot of times our townships obviously are reinvesting in the infrastructure. There's money that needs to be used to pay down debt service and reinvest in the water and sewer systems. During the course of 2021, there was about $1.57 million used in debt service payments as well as capital improvements. And then 3 rows up from the bottom, you can see the net change in the cash and cash equivalents was a consumption of about $540,000. Again, primarily due to the $2.5 million of fixed assets that were added to the system during 2021. And just a couple more quick schedules. If you go all the way to page 53, we get into the footnote section of the audit report. I still think of these as being new schedules, but in reality, it's 7 years. It's just I'm getting to a stage in life where 7 years doesn't seem like much time. So here we see a schedule that shows that the township is going to pay over the next 18 years, about $1,785,343 to fully fund your net pension liability. And the assumption is that your pension assets are going to earn a long-term rate of return of 7.6%. If the market doesn't earn 7.6% over the next 18 years, rather it earns 6.6%, 1% less, the total amount of funding that the township is going to have to pay primarily from its general fund to fully fund that pension liability increases up to about $2.48 million. And really the idea of this schedule is just to show readers what the true impact of market rates of return is on your cash outflows related to funding your total net pension liability. So you can see about a $700,000 swing in increase in the liability over the next 18 years if the market only earns 6.6% rather than the current estimate of 7.6%. Conversely, if the market does 1% better than expected, you can see that your net pension liability, the total payments decrease to about $1.2 million. So if the market does 1% better than we think it's going to, or better than the actuaries think it's going to, it would reduce the burden on your general fund by about $570,000 over the next 18 years. And the last schedule that I wanted to point out starts on page 61. This is the required supplemental information section of the audit report. And again, this is the 7th year that this schedule has been included in the township's financial statements. This shows the trends in the township's net pension liability. Ultimately, there's going to be 10 years of comparative data showing basically what your total pension liability was according to what the actuaries believe is going to be paid out by the township over the next 20, 30, 40, 50 years compared to the assets that have been set aside to cover that total pension liability. So the very top section shows the total pension liability came in about $5.3 million as of December 31st, 2021. And in order to cover that liability, there's $3.53 million of assets set aside in the MERS trust to cover it. If we take the $3.53 million of assets divided by the $5.31 million liability, the township is 66% funded. Treasury expects a minimum funding level of 60%, so you guys are about 6.4% better than the minimum level Treasury has set. Our clients on average are about 71, 72%, so you're a little bit less than average, but better than that minimum threshold right in the middle there. In a good spot in terms of getting to the point where you're 100% funded. You still have 18 years to fully fund that liability. And maybe more importantly, when you look at 2020, the township was at 62.5%. So you increased your funding percentage by 4% in about a year. And the biggest reason for that, if you look about halfway down the page, you can see the net investment income during 2021 was a positive $436,000 during the course of 2021. And really, in each of the past 3 years, you can see the investment income range from $340,000 up to $436,000, which equates to somewhere between 13.5% and 14.1%. So 3 consecutive strong years of investment earnings. We don't know what 2022 is going to look like, probably not going to be as favorable, but certainly that has been helpful in helping the township fully fund its liability. If you look about 25% of the way down, we see the change in assumptions line item. 2020, you can see that there was an increase in the total pension liability of $178,830. That was because the MERS Retirement Board decreased that long-term rate of return from 8% down to 7.6%. In other words, they expect less interest income over the next 18 years, which puts more of a burden, $178,000 of more of a burden on your general fund. Similarly, in 2021, they revised their assumptions looking at mortality rates, realizing that the more recent mortality tables show people are living longer, and as a result of updating those demographic assumptions, mortality assumptions, another $195,162 was added to your total pension liability. So we've got some competing forces here. We've had positive market returns negated somewhat by these changes in assumptions. Maybe a little bit of bad news here. In 2022, there's going to be one more year worth of unfavorable assumptions because the MERS Retirement Board is dropping that long-term expected rate of return from 7.6% down to 7.25%. So we're going to see one more year of an increase in your total pension liability because of the unfavorable change in assumptions. And then we'll also have negative, most possibly, at least not as strong market returns, most likely in 2022. So we'll have that to contend with as well. We might see a one-time uptick in your net pension liability next year, just kind of depending on how everything shakes out. But ultimately, as long as the township keeps on fully funding your annual required contribution that MERS provides to you over the next 18 years, you will continue to progress toward and eventually become 100% funded. And those are the highlights that I've got. Certainly happy to take any further questions the board might have.
Great, thank you very much. Does anybody have any questions? I don't know if we just start down the road, kind of.
One question is you have on here our long-term liabilities. Particularly, I'm interested in the sewer and water fund.
Sure.
We have I believe, 3 bond issues out right now. One will be paid off in 2024, I believe, and one in 2025. We've taken out another CWRF grant, which is what we're funding the current project with. And as part of that grant that it's not a grant, it's a loan program. But as part of that, we were granted I believe it was a 23% principal reduction.
Sure.
I'm just curious how you project that, once we've used all the money and we know what the amount is, how you project that long-term liability onto our cost statements, taking into account that 23%. That's about $1.4 million that's reduced from the principal. I was just wondering how you show that in our statements.
Sure. So the way that those loan agreements are going to be drafted will tell us, as well as the township, when that 23% gets earned. Most likely, it'll be upon the project completion. The project manager will have to sign off on it. State of Michigan, wherever the funding source is going to have to review the project, make sure all the specs have been met. At that point, they typically forgive the 23% that was included in the actual loan agreement. So I'd have to look at the actual contract to verify that. They will dictate, the contract itself will tell us when that revenue gets recognized or when the loan forgiveness gets recognized on your financial statements.
So you believe it would be at the beginning? In other words, we wouldn't be paying on that for next 18 or 20 years, and then at the end, we would realize that it would be at the beginning?
Most of the time, the way that those loan forgiveness bond programs are written is as soon as the project is completed, the amount gets forgiven at that point, and then they'll update the amortization tables, schedules to make sure that it doesn't get paid and then refunded back to the township after the fact.
Okay, all right. And just one other quick question. I think it was on page 52, I believe. You referenced, or maybe it was page 73. Anyway, you reference other CPA firms, and you mentioned in there that there wasn't another CPA firm that we consulted with, but my understanding is at the time you were doing the audit, we had another CPA firm in here doing work on our books. Were there no consultation between the two, or?
What that means is there weren't any matters that we needed to reach out to and get a second opinion from another accounting firm.
Okay.
So it's not unusual, it's very customary for a CPA to come in and help prepare the books and records for audit. That's different than us running into an accounting issue that we're not entirely confident on how to resolve or report a given item, and then we reach out to a third-party CPA firm to get a second opinion on it. There were no such matters in this audit.
I got you. Okay, thank you.
Sure.
I just have a question on the pension liability. So the last couple of years have been good, the market's been good, so that's why we're at a pretty good pace. But this year, so did you say 2022, they're going to set the rate at about 7.25% from 7.6?
Correct.
Okay, so during our budget process, if we have the cash to offset that or keep that funding going in a good leapfrog, we should probably throw a little cash at it if we have it.
Ultimately, that's a decision for the board to make. The more money sitting in the MERS trust, the higher your rates of return are going to be.
Right.
If we've got more money sitting in a trust earning interest, it's going to put less of a burden on your general fund. Ideally, the township would earn 7.25%. Obviously, that's a better return than what idle cash is going to generate in any other fund based on current market rates of returns on CDs and other investments. But that's the idea. Obviously, the more money that goes into the MERS trust, those investment earnings should take some of the burden off of your general fund. But ultimately, it's up to the board to decide if it's prudent to put extra funds. Once it goes into the trust, it's irrevocable. You can't take them back.
Right. Thank you for that. Tammy, if you could make a point when we go through the budget that I think we should discuss that as a board because we're going to have some downturn in investments, it looks like. Thank you.
Sure.
I don't have any questions.
So it would be a bad idea to take the extra money we've got right now and just completely fund that?
Oh, I'm saying that is for the board. I'm not a financial advisor.
I understand,
so I
but
have to make sure.
so you're saying if we take, if we've got $3 million sitting off to the side here for what we can use, and we have a pension liability of 1.78 right now. If we took that money and just paid for this, what would be the benefit in the long term?
Well, that's an extra $1.8 million, earning 7.25%.
But we can't take it out.
But it reduces the amount that the township would need to pay each year for your annual required contribution. So when MERS sees, okay, these guys are 100% funded, they're going to ask for less funds each year for you guys to contribute because there's no unfunded liability. So what they do is they look at the normal cost. So what is the cost for the township to be able to provide the pension benefits to your active employees? I'm just making theoretical numbers up. Maybe
Sure,
it's $50,000 per year.
Okay.
So the township has to pay $50,000 per year in order to be able to provide pension benefits to active employees. Then they look at the unfunded liability, which is what, $1.7 million. They're taking that $1.7 million, dividing it by 18 and saying, okay, you're going to pay us $50,000 per year, plus we want another $100,000 on top of that to make sure that you're fully funded over the course of the next 18 years. I'm using very rough numbers here. So your annual required contribution goes up to $150,000 in those circumstances. If the township cuts a check for $1.7 million and becomes 100% funded, the MERS retirement, the annual required contribution would decrease to $50,000 per year. There would be no unfunded piece that needs to be caught up. So it takes pressure off of your general fund budget in future years by becoming fully funded today.
So if we did become fully funded today, then the money that's in there would continue to earn the 7.25%, right? So at that rate, would there be a time in the future, if everything went very well, that we wouldn't even have to contribute to the MERS fund anymore because there'd be enough money being garnered in interest to cover all of the liabilities?
There are active employees that are still receiving, your liability keeps on increasing, so you would have to keep on putting more assets into the plan. So because you have active employees who are entitled to a benefit 20 or 30 or 40 years down the road, the township is going to have to make a monthly payment into the MERS plan to stay current, to stay at that 100% funding level. It won't be until the township closes the plan and there are no active employees participating in the plan. That would be the only time that there would be, and if that condition was met and the township was 100% funded, then there would be no requirement to make a monthly payment into the
So
plan.
feasibly, we could put enough money into that net pension liability account that over the course of time, it would be a self-sustaining fund.
If it's a closed plan, then yes.
Or if
it-
we get it to a point where if we get it to a tipping point where there's more money garnered in interest than could possibly be added by additional employees or whatever additional liabilities.
Sure. If, you would have to be more north of 100% funded to achieve that.
Sure.
But if there were excess investment earnings greater than the normal cost of providing benefits to active employees, then yes, you would no longer need to make a monthly payment.
Do you have any townships in the 50 that you work with that are at that point?
I probably have 2 or 3 local units that are north of 100% funded. It's not common.
Well, we like to be uncommon in some
Sure,
areas.
sure.
That's
And the
all.
problem is, it's a moving target, right?
Sure.
So this is
Right.
an
Yeah, I
18-year
understand.
journey, it keeps on changing. So you could become 100% funded, you could be 110% funded, and then the next year, the market crashes 20%, and then all of a sudden, you're at 90% funded. It just depends on how the market does. But over time, 7.25% is what we expect those investments to earn.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
No, thank you, Ron. What's your full name, sir?
Joe, last name Verlin, V as in Victor, E-R-L-I-N.
I don't have any questions. Thank you very much.
Okay.
And sorry for the confusion on the location. but-
I'm embarrassed about that.
Well, that's all right. You're here.
Humbled.
You're here. So, all right, well, thank you very much. You're more than welcome to stay for the entire meeting. I'm not really sure why you'd want to do that, but you can if you would like to. But if not, then you're free to go, and we will continue on with the meeting.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
All right, thank you.
Thanks for making the trip.
Sure.
All right, so moving on the agenda, we are at our first public comment section of the agenda. Any public comment at this time needs to be on an agenda item, and we do have cards that were needed to be filled out. Do we have any cards, Tammy?
I have two.
Okay,
First one is Janice Wilbur.
okay. If you could please come to the podium, which is right over there. You're fine.
I'm here with an update on the Oscoda Senior Citizen Center. This building was erected in 1986 and has over 7,300 square foot. We offer services to the seniors and various other agencies in the area. The office space is utilized by the County Commission on Aging. There are 2 offices, which are their offices there, and we serve the lunches and dinners. We do all the home-delivered meals. We have pickup meals for those who can't come in, and in 1 month this spring, I believe it was April, we served over 4,000 meals out of our senior center, including all the meals that we send out. It's a happy place. We have activities all week for people. We have a senior citizens writing group. We have activities for them. We have exercise machines. We have a pool table. There's something to keep everybody happy, hopefully. Due to the funds that are provided have built and added on to this building since the beginning. And it is totally funded by your tax dollars. It's there. The 2 projects that we are considered kind of in the near future, one is the septic service. This is still the original service, and it's been put to the test. We baby it along, but we have, we're kind of stingy with our money, and we have good fund management, and we've retained enough funds to install a new septic system when it's absolutely necessary. But also, our furnace is at an age where it's being pressured. The other project that we have to work on is the American Red Cross has designated our senior center as an emergency shelter. It's kind of hard when we don't have the generator system, and so we have to consider a generator. As a designated shelter, with an evacuation capacity of 350 and a post-impact of 175, this community is strategic for even events of like power outage, when elderly people have to be displaced. There have been times in the past where we have had to empty our freezers. Then what? Because there's no power to keep the food, and we don't want to serve bad food. Thunderstorms and blizzards in this area are also a problem at times. Not all of the township goes down at once, but hit and miss, you know. The ensemble, for the safety of our elderly residents, the Oscoda Ensemble Building Authority and the senior citizens have made it a priority to equip our local shelter with a generator system that will support the needs. This is a priority, and if need be, it can be funded from careful fund management should grant funding not be available. We are working on grant funding, but you can't depend on it. So this is something that we really should address after this many years. We've come a long ways.
Thank you very much. I'm sorry, but your 3 minutes.
Pardon?
Your time is up, but thank you very much for
At this
reading
time,
that.
we would like to ask our lease to be renewed.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any additional comment cards for agenda items?
One more, Kathy Woosterbarth.
Okay.
Hi, everybody. Kathy Woosterbarth. I've asked Tammy to share the document that I used during last week's testimony that I had at the U.S. Senate field hearing entitled Improving Interagency and Intergovernmental Coordination on PFAS for Michigan Communities. And I'm bringing this to you because of the item that's on the agenda about the wastewater treatment plant. I talked about my personal experiences in the hearing, the history of PFAS contamination in Oscoda, our exposure as a community, and suggestions moving forward to improve coordination. What I'd like to present to you tonight is the suggestions I have based on my now years of experiences with the Restoration Advisory Board, as a community advocate, and part of a dynamic and, dare I say, dream team of activists and experts working on our site, the former Wurtsmith Air Force Base. As I have shared with you before, our community team consists of the former site managers that have worked on this site for decades. Bob and Mark are retired and are so determined to help the people of Oscoda, they are using their retirement years to assist us. That is incredibly generous, and we should all be eternally grateful. I'm seeing now what my mother says when you hand out the handouts at the beginning of a class. You shouldn't do that because then people don't pay attention. We also have attorneys, experts in political approaches, CERCLA cleanup laws, and scientific research. And then there are the environmental groups that are partnering with us, offering their expertise in navigating these issues. Veterans and community members are working hard to collect and share information, and legislators are fighting for us at the state and federal levels for what we need to address this right here in Oscoda. And that takes me to you, the township. Remember who the polluter is in this mess. It's the U.S. Air Force, and they have our number. You aren't experts in toxic remediation, CERCLA laws, state regulation, health advisory, testings, and all the other aspects in this situation. You have a township to run. To drive that back home on the purpose of the hearing, improving interagency and intergovernmental coordination on PFAS, you need improvement. Our communication with the Air Force should be streamlined through our township representative on the RAB, and currently that is Tim Cummings. All communications should flow through him using the established chain of command that this board just reviewed and were tasked to follow. With the help of the township superintendent, Tim can move the information forward to the board in a way that minimizes delays, maximizes communication, and translates this information in a way that the board can make sound, educated decisions. It's hard to imagine, but this is going to get worse before it gets better. We are only a fraction of the way through the cleanup, and the health advisories are becoming more protective of our health, which will most likely translate into expensive steps moving forward, not just for us, but for all communities. I am putting everyone on this board on notice. We must all work together against this formidable opponent. Our partners are counting on us to be strong and united, but the U.S. Air Force is counting on us to be splintered. We are in a unique position at all levels of this issue, federal, state, local, and with the Environmental Protection Agency. We can be the model of the Department of Defense's PFAS site cleanup, and you have the enormous responsibility to take that necessary step to ensure that happens, ultimately to protect us from PFAS contamination. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kathy.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, moving on then, those were the only two comment cards for the first public comment. Okay, we do have a second public comment section that is open for anything that's on the agenda or not on the agenda. That's at the end of the meeting. So moving on to consent agenda. First, we have a few approval of meeting minutes. The first one is the regular meeting minutes from July 25th. I believe that Josh emailed out some updates this afternoon. Any comments on those or additional changes, thoughts?
I did have one.
Okay.
I emailed Josh this afternoon. I don't know if he got my email in time. But on page 3 of the minutes, under the row invoice 104119, he corrected who made the motion and supported, but it is for the water system improvement project, not the wastewater project.
Okay, that was, I'm sorry, which invoice was that, Bill?
104119.
Okay. I did see that email go out later. Okay. Is that correction? All right, anything else on those meeting minutes from July 25th? Okay, then there's work session meeting minutes from July 21st. Comments on those? Okay. Then moving on to finance, we have payment of bills. The first is from the prepaid run on July 27th in the amount of $49,194.69. Are there any specific comments in that run or questions? Okay, hearing none, we have a prepaid on August 1st for $28,487.83. Any questions on that run? Hearing none. Check run August 9th, $79,896.13. Any questions on those? Comments? Oh, okay. Last one is the CWSRF checking report for $49,411.25. Any questions or comments on those? Okay, with that, I would take a motion to approve the consent agenda.
So moved.
Support.
Okay, there's a motion by Mr. Spencer, support by Ms. McGuire to approve the consent agenda with that one correction to the regular meeting minutes on July 25th. Roll call, please.
Mr. Palmer?
Yes.
Mr. Wurstabarth?
Yes.
Ms. McGuire?
Yes.
Mr. Cummings?
Yes.
Mr. Sutton, yes. Mr. Spencer?
Yes.
Ms. Richards?
Yes, motion carried. Moving on to subcommittee reports and project updates. On the agenda this evening is the RAB update from Mr. Cummings, I believe.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay.
So I just want to give everybody a reminder that the RAB meeting that is being scheduled by the U.S. Air Force is scheduled for August 17th. Once again, it will be a Wednesday. It will be located at the United Methodist Church at 120 West Dwight Street here in Oscoda. And it will also be available to the public who want to attend virtually by Zoom. There will be an informal poster session from 4 to 5 p.m. And let's see, there will also be the session will also be attended in person for the RAB itself. And I would expect that you'd see a notice of this in the Oscoda Press. And I think that's everything that we need to know.
Okay, all right, thank you,
Thank you.
Tim. All right, moving on then to the superintendent's report. First on your list there, Tammy, is Phase 3 Water Main Improvement Projects Proposal.
All right, your packet contains a proposal from Rowe Professional Services for the upcoming Phase 3 Water Main Improvement Project. This project involves approximately 6,000 feet of 8-inch water main. The Phase 3 Water Main Improvement Project was recently bundled together and consists of Phases A, F, and Woodland Drive. Each of these projects were designed under separate agreements, but for lack of funding, were not constructed. Rowe has provided a fee breakdown for this project in the amount of $133,125, which includes rebundling unconstructed previous phases into a single package, permit applications for water main construction, work within state, county, railroad rights-of-way, and soil erosion control. I would ask that the board approve the proposal from Rowe Professional Services in the amount of $133,125, which can be reimbursed through the C2R2 grant from the state of Michigan.
Okay, does anybody have any questions for Tammy?
Yeah. This is a project we recently awarded the contract to.
Yes.
And in order to have that contract, that RFP put out, there's a good deal of engineering that has to go into that ahead of time. And I know this project, I see Mr. Freeman's here with us, when he was with Rowe at that time and went through a lot of the engineering costs, and I'm assuming that we have paid those costs that were used to put this program together originally. So my understanding is this $133,000 is now for the part of the engineering where they will inspect the construction as it goes forward and the surveying and those kinds of things.
I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong here, Rick.
Yep.
Sure.
Yep.
I
Yeah, please
I
come up,
thought that
William.
when the original proposal came through, it was for all of the projects, and they weren't billing those until we actually got to that project, but Rick will be able to say for sure.
I'll put my roll hat back on.
Okay.
If you recall, the Phase A and Woodland was, Woodland was originally part of the Loud Drive project, which was Phase 2 back in 2020. We weren't able to go forward with that project at that time because we didn't have the easement to put the main running north from Interlake up to Phelan Creek. So we had to pull that project out at the last minute, go through the whole process of the circuit court process with the township attorney, acquired that easement. And then we packaged, at that time, Rowe packaged that project with Oak, Van Etten, and Oscoda, that section, Phase A, I'll say, they're west of Cedar Lake. And we included that in that ECWAG grant application that we were initially awarded back in late 2020, and then that was pulled from us in early 2021. So at that time, with the C2R2 and the DWRF, Rowe then started assembling how to get that project back on a funding track. And so of the 133,000 and change, about 12,000 of that is associated with rebundling that and getting it in from a USDA RD bidding package. They have a little different requirements than what DWRF at the time did and C2R2 does. So 12,000 was associated with rebundling that to get it into the project that was just advertised and awarded to Caterman at the last meeting. At that time, because we pulled Woodland out and we didn't know where the funding was, there was never any proposal put forward to provide, as you just said, the construction administration, observation and stuff for that part of the project. So the remainder of that 133,000 in this proposal is to cover those services, to administer it, provide the inspection, materials testing and all that.
Okay, so how do I put this? The original engineering work that went into, so let's say Woodland Drive, because that was originally part of Phase 2.
Right.
There was a significant amount of engineering work.
Yeah, it
that
was
went into
completely
that.
designed at that time, correct.
And that has been paid.
Yes, that has been paid.
That was
Yep.
my question.
And
Okay.
when we were going through the process of the C2R funding, we've went back and captured all of that funding along with this future, with this into the C2R2 funding, so that'll all be reimbursable back to the township.
Through the C2R2.
Correct, once
Okay.
Eagle gets that.
All right, thank you,
So-
thank you.
Any other questions? Yeah. A little sidebar, I guess, so, oh, are you just having them sit there for?
Yeah,
Okay, there's a few things on the agenda. Good idea. Okay, so basically, this is just construction oversee for what we just awarded,
Correct.
right? And that number has been baked into the amounts that the grant agencies have already approved?
Correct.
Okay,
And there should be some savings, because now that we've got that project going on along with the other phase that Elmer's gonna be starting. So there should be some economy of scale, and that's why that price actually probably came down a little bit from what they had originally thought it was gonna cost, because it was gonna be done at separate times, so.
gotcha, okay. Any additional questions, or is there a motion to approve?
I would make a motion to approve the proposal from Rowe Professional Services for Phase 3 of the water main extension project in the amount of $133,125 to be paid from the C2R2 grant funding.
Support, Worcester Barth.
Okay, there's a motion by Mr. Palmer and support by Mr. Worcesterbarth to approve the row proposal as presented. Roll call, please.
Mr. Spencer,
Yes.
Mr. Palmer,
Yes.
Mr. Worcsterbarth,
Yes.
Ms. McGuire,
Yes.
Mr. Cummings,
Yes.
Mr. Sutton, yes, Ms. Richards.
Yes, motion carried. Moving on then to the third amendment to the Old Orchard Park and Foot Site Park lease. Tammy?
Right. Your packet contains a third amendment to the original lease contract proposed by Consumers Energy. This amendment would provide the FHWA's current requirement for the Iosco Exploration Trail, which is needed for the MDOT bid letting, and provide the township with a lease extension for Foot Site and Old Orchard Park until 2034. I would ask that the board approve the third amendment to the lease with Consumers Energy for Foot Site and Old Orchard Park.
Okay, is there any questions, or? It's pretty straightforward.
I'll make a motion that we approve the third amendment to the lease with Consumers Energy.
Support by Cummings.
Okay, there's a motion by Ms. McGuire and support by Mr. Cummings to approve the third amendment as presented. Roll call, please.
Ms. McGuire,
Yes.
Mr. Worcsterbarth,
Yes.
Mr. Palmer,
Yes.
Mr. Sutton, yes, Mr. Spencer,
Yes.
Mr. Cummings,
Yes.
Ms. Richards.
Yes, motion carried. Moving on then to the resolutions section on the agenda. First is resolution number 2022-23, the commitment to fund the Iron Belt Trail Phase 3 bike path.
Yes, the purpose of this amendment is MDOT's process for state and funding for the project is, we're obviously at the 23rd hour where we're going to be advertising this project here within the next couple of weeks with a bid letting on, hopefully, if everything goes according to plan, October 7th. Part of the MDOT local agency program process is that we have completed an estimate for the project. We have secured all of the additional local funding that is required based on those estimates. But we're right there, and I think I've reported in the past, we've captured it all. We don't have a lot of wiggle room as far as, if the project comes in significantly higher at bidding. MDOT requires that if the bids come in up to 10% higher, that they will automatically, without question, they will award the project. So what this resolution is doing is an agreement or a resolution from the township that if those bids come in up to 10% above the estimate as it stands today, that the township will cover that additional 10%. And we're going to continue to secure funds so that we've got a contingency, but we need to have that resolution in place before MDOT will allow us to go ahead and advertise the project. And that's an agreement between, it's a supplemental agreement between you and Iosco County Road Commission, and I think that was included in the packet, or like that original agreement between the two entities, because they're the Act 51 agent. So it's just a precaution that MDOT requires.
So, ladies first.
Well, if it's 10%, what would that be? What's it projected at?
If it would be about a $260,000 additional,
So shouldn't MDOT, if they're going to just award that, maybe they should just cough up the 200,000?
we can make that request, but I doubt that we will be successful.
Saying.
So, and like I said, if for some reason the bids come in higher than 10%, you and the Oscoda County Road Commission have the first right of refusal. You do not have to accept those bids if they're in excess of that 10%.
Well, I mean, where are we going to squeak out 200,000 if they come in 10%?
As I said, we are already in the process of securing additional funds for contingencies. It's just that I don't have a final number on that yet.
Right.
But we've been programming for that, and if everything comes in accordingly, we should have more than enough to cover that 10%. And again, we will have the full duration of 2023 to secure that additional funding. So, my recommendation, I don't have any concern with us, not being able to meet that. The other thing is I think we're gonna get very good bids on this project, which will be actually less than the engineer's estimate, so.
That'd be nice.
Gonna hold you to it.
Yeah.
Just kidding.
Hand
You know where to
drive.
find me.
Any
Maybe.
additional questions? Any additional questions, or are we ready to act? I make a motion, we approve Resolution 2022-23.
Support, Palmer.
Okay, there's a motion by Richards, support by Palmer, to approve Resolution 2022-23. Roll call, please.
Mr. Palmer?
Yes.
Mr. Sutton, yes. Mr. Wishbarth?
Yes.
Ms. McGuire?
Yes.
Mr. Spencer?
Yes.
Mr. Cummings?
Yes.
Ms. Richards?
Yes, motion carried. Moving on to, I was going to suggest that Nicole move over. So moving on to new section 6.36 ADU ordinance, which sounds like something that we're going to blow up. I don't know why. Yeah, but anyways.
I assure you that's not the case.
Okay, good to know.
Okay, so to start, our attorney did suggest that we do things a little differently than we had in the past. She had been reviewing some of our practices and suggested that we do 2 reads at the township board level. So tonight's going to be considered the first read, and then the next time I bring it back, it'll be the clean copy.
Okay.
Okay, so on the ADU ordinance, that's for accessory dwelling units, and our professional planner, John Iancongelli, did write this. It has been through the attorney review, his review, the ordinance revision subcommittee, and public hearing, and a first read at the planning commission.
Okay, does anybody have any questions? I sent one earlier. I was just wondering why short-term rental is defined in there, and then it's actually not allowed, and I asked why not. And it was explained to me that the reason why not is because this is an additional hope to aid in the housing shortage.
That's correct.
Okay.
Yes, we were actually, Mr. Tasher and myself went to a housing summit conference in May in Lansing, and we were already in process of doing these ordinances, micro-housing, ADU, different things like that, but they were also suggested during that summit. It's not just a housing problem here in the township, it's everywhere. So they're just finding that things like this opens up the doors for more opportunity for people. You know, maybe they want a smaller square footage to live in, or it helps with the ADU if it can be used as a long-term rental. It can generate some income. It helps them maintain their property, things like that. And then it also allows for more affordable housing for people.
Right. Yeah, I just had the question because it's a minimum of 300 square feet and a maximum of 900 square feet. That, yeah, it's pretty, yeah. But anyways. Any other questions on that? So basically, we're not acting right now, correct?
Well, I do need approval.
Be the first, yeah, first reading.
Second reading.
Start the process.
I don't think we act on it.
There's no.
We don't act on a
Okay.
first read.
Is it just, if you have any
I
recommendations?
mean, I guess
Yeah.
I guess my thought would be, is there anything else that we want to recommend being changed, or everything's good?
That's
Yeah.
the action I'm looking for.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's,
but then it would
That's-
have to go back to the planning commission, because that was our problem last time.
yeah, that's why we generally have 2 reads at the planning commission. That's why I was a little confused when the attorney suggested we have 2 reads here, but after thinking about it, it kind of makes sense, because this board should have an opportunity, if there's something in there that you see that we missed at the planning commission, you could make a reference, and then we can make that change, and then come back and have the second read. In the past, we've had a public hearing and 2 reads at the planning commission, send it to the township board, and we just sort of automatically approve it, where it does make sense to me that we would have 2 reads, give this board an opportunity to read through and look at all the ordinance language, and if there's something that you feel needs to be changed or corrected, we can do that. So it kind of makes sense to me, I guess, to have 2 reads here with the township board.
Right, I guess my question was, though, if we make a suggestion, you've already done a hearing, so if we make a suggestion and you make a change, then do you have to do another hearing? So I guess that would be my clarification.
More than likely, yes.
Okay,
Yes.
so it seems like
Start the
before,
process
yeah.
over.
Huh,
It's
yeah.
like they start the process
Right.
over.
So it seems like maybe
So
before you had the public.
I can
hearing.
do it in a way where the public hearing comes to the board.
Hmm?
I can do it in a way also where the public hearing comes to the board, I believe, but we do it at the planning commission level, so.
Right.
If there are changes, I can certainly go back and do a newspaper publication and another public hearing.
Yeah, I think as long as it's published, you can make changes before the second read.
I mean, I'm not suggesting that you make any changes, I'm just looking
Oh,
for
that's
clarification. Okay. Any other comments besides mine?
I just had a question about the districts that it's allowed in, the zoning districts. Is there any that are not on this list?
Forestry is not on here. And Wordsmith Business, so WB1, WB2, WB3. There's Wordsmith Residential, but also it would be the SSBN, the downtown area, and the Corridor Business District. Those aren't on the list either.
So that's not, they wouldn't be allowed in that area then?
Correct.
Okay, so they're only
Unless it's
allowed in the
part
districts
of
that's.
that specific zoning. If it's under the Corridor Business District and it's an accessory use that's allowed for a commercial building or something.
Okay.
But
Thank you.
Any other questions? Comments? Okay. All right, so that one sounds pretty clean. Then moving on to the new section 6.36 ADU ordinance. Oh, no, I just did that. Scratch that thought. New micro housing ordinance, number 3.
So this is, essentially, it's tiny houses. We're just going to call it micro housing. And same thing, our professional planner put this together for us. It went through the ordinance revision subcommittee, I think a few times, actually. And then the attorney, planning commission, first read public hearing. That's happened on all of these, so I'll just tell you that now for all of them. But the idea is the same as, the other one, is just to offer something different that people are allowed to go ahead and build. It is restricted to the forestry area and planned unit developments, and in the next one, you'll see it's planned developments, but it's a maximum of 500 square feet or less.
So it's only allowed in the
Correct, as a permitted use.
forestry district, sorry, not in the forest. As a what?
As a permitted use, rather than a special permitted use.
Is it allowed as a special permitted use in other districts?
It was written that way. And it was primarily for forestry, special permitted use. And then, again, it can be in, as a planned development, and that's essentially a special land use type permit as well. So, really, it's just in forestry.
Okay.
But for standalones.
Gotcha. All right. Any other questions? Okay. All right, I guess we're good with that one. And then number 4 is Article 5, Planned Unit Development Ordinance Amendment.
So this one is a heavily amended ordinance, and John Iancongelli amended it for us. We had planned unit development, and we are changing it to planned development, and we changed the requirements. The planned unit development ordinance was very restrictive as far as you had to have 5 acres or more to even be able to apply for one. Some of the new development coming through, there's parcels, a lot of the parcels that people are able to pick up are not 5 acres or more. And John with Beckett and Rader, our planner, he did state that a lot of townships are actually taking that 5-acre requirement out of there, so that, you know, the idea of the planned unit development is they have to come to the planning commission. This is what they want to do, you know, with this many units, with the accessory buildings with it and parking and stuff, and they look at it based off of that. So we just needed to update it. A lot of our ordinances are restrictive, so to help with housing and being able to bring in different projects like that, it was time to do some amending and new writing.
Right, and what areas are those allowed in?
They are allowed in every zoning district except it's a parking district, a natural river district, Wordsmith Airport Overlay, and A1, and that's the airport protection zone. So essentially, they are allowed in all of the existing zoning districts. It was written except for R1, but we did take that out of there.
So they're allowed in business districts, in the business planned?
Mm-hmm. Yep, they were before, as far as I can remember, they were allowed everywhere as well. It just.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Any other comments besides mine? All right, moving on then to chapter 20. I mean, are we doing the same thing for each? Sorry.
Yeah.
Just for clarification.
Yep,
Yeah, right.
they're all the same.
Chapter 20, Parks and Recreation Code of Ordinance Amendment.
So this actually started a few years ago with Lorna and Al. They started to delete items out of here that Al did not find necessary, you know, for the parks. I believe due to COVID, things kind of came to a halt. And then when I came into the office, he asked me to look into it and see where we were with it. So some of these items were already deleted, waiting to go through the revision process with the board, but it was just at a standstill. So the biggest thing that I've worked on with the attorney on this is deleting the it's Division 2, the alcoholic beverage permits. She didn't find that section necessary because we don't issue them. That has not been a standard practice that at least anybody in the building, and that's been there for, you know, some years, have ever seen. So since we don't issue those permits, they just need to basically follow state rules, or, you know, if they're having an event, it's like a liquor commission rules. So it takes it out of our hands. You know, we're not, and we deleted that. And then there were a lot of just small edits, you know, capitalizing things and punctuation and that. So this has also been through attorney, planner, subcommittee, planning commission.
Okay. Ooh, and I just realized I had a question on the last one, I'm sorry, on the PD development. I forgot I had a little side note here. So I'm going to go back to that one real quick. I read in there an escrow fund account.
Yes.
So we're going to manage an escrow account for somebody? And have we run that by our accounting to see how that would work?
Nobody's asked me.
No, I have not talked to Jamie. It was recommended by the planner. It's actually something that a lot of townships, they do. And it is in our ordinance currently that we can require escrow for site plans or land unit developments. And we've just never required it. But it will help with, there's been a few projects where, say, the engineer has to re-review the plan several times. Well, we'll have a certain amount, and it's going to be determined per plan development, depending on the size of the project, the length of the project. A minimum of $2,000 is going to be required, and that'll just help pay for extra plan reviews. Once they're done building, if they haven't spent any of that, they get it all back. So if it's a larger amount, it's also a good incentive for them to complete the project so they can get their escrow funds back.
Okay, and I apologize for missing my notes on that, but.
I think, Nicole, that would kind of work with something like with the deposits for the fireworks people, where she would bring in the money, I would give her the receipts, and then when it was time to refund the people, she writes a memo, and then the funds get refunded.
Okay.
Be that type of
So again, sorry to
scenario.
go backwards there, but, okay. So back to the Parks and Rec Code. Any comments on those? There was quite a few.
Yeah, just one comment on that. Everything we've talked about up till now has been on our zoning ordinance. This is in our code of ordinances.
Okay.
Which is what the police department use for enforcing our laws here in the township. So this is not part of the zoning ordinance, but the code of ordinances we have.
Gotcha.
Too.
So has the police chief then reviewed these at the same time? To be comfortable with those coming off, if it's something that he has to?
I didn't think about him doing a review.
Okay. I guess it
I
has
can
time
have
to
him
go
take-
back, yeah,
Yep.
before it comes back,
That's the idea of the
because I
second
know
read.
the questions have been before, I know when they started bike night downtown, one of the big questions was open intoxicants and so on in town. And like David had indicated to me that we don't have a rule about walking around with an open intoxicant. That being said, you can't leave an establishment, except for now we have a social district, but that's different. But you can't leave an establishment with something, So I didn't know how that, and same thing with our beach park. There's kind of a gray area there as well, because we don't really have a rule that says you cannot drink, it says you cannot serve. So,
I'll have him review it.
okay. All right. Any other comments? Okay. And going on to number 6, section 4.20 forestry districts revisions.
This one here, this one was, it was just a change in letter E under number 6 of special notes, the minimum land area requirement from 10 acres to 5 acres if somebody wanted to build a small cabin. But now with micro housing, it could almost go either way.
Okay. Any questions on that one? All right. Then moving on to number 7, section 6.2.6, accessory structures on vacant lots revision.
Okay, and this one, it did not allow for bathroom facilities in an accessory structure, but this specifically pertains to accessory structures on vacant lots. So we do allow accessory structures on a vacant lot if a homeowner applies because they're on a lakefront. So that's what this one here is telling you, that they can use their lot across the street to build an accessory structure because a lot of those lots aren't maybe wide enough or they're right at the road. So it just didn't really make sense that in the other accessory structure portion of the ordinance, it doesn't specify that bathroom facilities aren't allowed. So you can have it on this side of your lot and have a bathroom, but if it's across the road, you couldn't. So just didn't didn't go hand in hand. So we took that out and they just have to make sure to follow the Township Utility Ordinance 2019-265. And that's from the Water Department.
Okay, any questions on that?
I just have a question, Nicole. And thanks for answering the question on the water, because I just saw a property get built on Cedar Lake Drive this summer that water was allowed in the detached structure. I didn't think that that was allowed either waterfront or elsewhere.
Oh, okay.
So
Yep, if
my
you-
question was going to be, does the county enforce, I mean, looking at this, because they shouldn't have inspected it, but you answered my question. The second one is, there's 4 or 5 properties that I know of that have accessory detached structures, but they exceed 20 feet in height. So I'd like the planning commission, because I know they exist out there, and some of them are recent builds. To me, I'd like the planning commission to go back and look. I don't think the height of that roof should exceed the house. It should be below whatever the house is built, and I think, in my opinion, that would be a better way to describe it.
Right. Right offhand, what jumps out at me is with the accessory structures. So there's a limit of like 1,600 square feet, 20 feet in height, unless you have a bigger house and a taller house, then it goes to, or 75% of, the floor footprint. So you could have over a 1,600 square foot garage, and the same with height if your house is much taller. So I'll have to maybe get with you and see what ones you're talking about, just out
Okay.
of curiosity, so.
I just commented, like, I'm
Okay,
gonna look at
yeah,
that.
no, I can run that by them at my next meeting.
Thank you.
Any other questions on that one? All right, well, you guys have been busy.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thanks for bringing it to us. All right.
Thanks, thank you.
Okay, so then moving on to the other section of our report, or our agenda, I should say. The first is being brought forward from our last meeting, I believe, and that's a lot split request, and we're revisiting.
Yes, so Nancy has provided here further explanation of the lot split. Her numbers were correct at the last meeting. It just, the parcel code has the 365, 366, 367, and 368 is what was under parcel 064J50000366. So I believe anyone that really wanted to know, she was ready and willing to explain it to. And the parcel codes are correct from the last meeting. So
Okay, so we're being asked again to
combine,
combine and split.
yes.
Okay, so there's a request, clicked the wrong thing. So we'll take the first one, which is the request to split, parcel code 064J5000036700, correct? Okay, is there a motion to approve that split?
Make a motion to approve that split as presented.
Support.
Okay, there's a motion by Sutton, support by McGuire to approve the split as requested. Any further discussion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Spencer?
Yes.
Mr. Palmer?
Yes.
Mr. Wishtabarth?
Yes.
Ms. McGuire?
Yes.
Mr. Cummings?
Yes.
Mr. Sutton, yes. Ms. Richards?
Yes. And then we have the request to combine. So the request to combine is lot 064J5000036900 and 064J5000036600. And parcel code, or the westerly 6 feet of lot 369. So is there a motion to approve that as submitted?
So moved.
Support?
A motion by Ms. McGuire, support by Mr. Sutton to approve the combination as requested. Roll call, please.
Mr. Cummings?
Yes.
Mr. Palmer?
Yes.
Mr. Sutton, yes. Mr. Wishtabarth?
Yes.
Ms. McGuire?
Yes.
Mr. Spencer?
Yes.
Ms. Richards?
Yes, motion carried. Moving on then to the resignation of the Oscoda Sable Senior Building Authority member, which is Catherine Larrabee. She was an alternate She moved out of the township, so she is having to resign based on that. So I would like her, and again, it's an alternate, that seat, so that is an available seat if anybody's interested. That term is up 12/31/2022, so, but I need a motion to approve that resignation.
So moved.
Okay, I'll support that. There's a motion by Mr. Spencer and support by Ms. Richards. Geez, I'm the one who supported it, couldn't remember. Okay. Roll call, please.
Ms. McGuire?
Yes.
Mr. Wurstabarth?
Yes.
Mr. Palmer?
Yes.
Mr. Sutton, yes. Mr. Spencer?
Yes.
Mr. Cummings?
Yes.
Ms. Richards?
Yes, and I did convey to Catherine, thanked her for her service to date, so.
Excellent.
Okay, moving on then is a proposal for presentation, influence of wastewater treatment facility discharge on PFAS and Clark's Marsh.
Yes, that is me.
Okay,
So I asked to have this item added to the agenda because I felt that the topic of the wastewater treatment plant and the water being filtered through it needs to be discussed, presented to this board. So Mark Henry has a presentation that he would like to do, and I'd like to have it as an agenda item, maybe for, let's say, 10 minutes, something like that, at the next board meeting of the 22nd of August. So I was just trying to give you guys some information about it. I kind of expected I was going to put it under the subcommittee, but it's because it requires board action, we have to put it under this section. Were there any questions about this presentation or anything about it that maybe I can answer?
You want it added as an agenda item for action?
Yes, I want to get it approved, that we would actually have it, agreed that we would have it at the August 22nd meeting.
Right, but you're saying you
Presentation.
want it as an agenda item so we can vote on something after that presentation?
No, I'm not. I'm
sorry, I'm
asking, I'm
misunderstanding
looking
that.
for, I want to know if anyone has any questions about this presentation. And then I will actually make a motion to add this to the agenda for August 22nd.
so he's looking for approval to put it on the agenda, that's
Right,
the
yeah,
voting thing,
so but
yes.
if you
For
put-
August 22nd.
Under presentation at the
Correct.
early of the meeting.
That's
right.
I understand that.
I guess, has this already been presented to Eagle?
Yes.
And what were
Yes.
their thoughts on that?
Yes.
I think the answer is yes, that's right.
Were there any actions to us from that for Eagle?
No.
And is there any data to go with that other than just those photos?
Not at the moment. There was no prescribed scripted speech that goes with this, for sure. Now, what he's trying to do is he's trying to get some information to this board regarding the discharge of PFAS into Clark's Marsh.
Right, and I understand that, but in the same sense, we have an operator, F&V, that we've hired to take care of our wastewater treatment facility, and we have a permitting agency, Eagle, that's run by the state of Michigan. I guess I'm unsure why we're going outside of those resources to seek somebody else's input when those two agencies haven't indicated that there is an issue.
Because our operator is not involved in the RAB meetings, and we have a serious issue of contamination, and this board runs the township, not F&V, not any
Understand
outside
that.
resource, not Eagle. So I, for one, want to have the information, and if there's something that we need to act on or start thinking about acting on, then let's get it presented.
I guess why would we present it to the board instead of the actual people taking care of it?
Right, I mean,
The
last time I
actual
checked, I don't
people
have a degree
taking-
in any of that, so why,
Correct.
I don't have the know-how to, I mean, you could tell me one, you can tell me whatever,
Well,
and
I
I'm
think-
going to look at the experts for, for,
I don't
so
think
why
that
would we not be presenting
F&V
to
could
them?
be presented. They could be asked to be present when we do the presentation.
Wouldn't this be something, though, that Tammy would also be and taking care of, not us, the board, not at this point? She would be working with Eagle and F&V to do what's best for the township until they come to some type of, where Tammy feels like she needs to bring it to the board.
So you're not interested in being educated on the subject of water coming, creating a a discharge problem of PFAS to the Oscoda River.
If,
to Clark's Marsh.
if Tammy's wants to bring it to the board, then I think it should come from her.
Okay, does that mean a matter of whether she's speaking or me, or whether it's a matter of somebody like Mark versus her, or what do you mean?
I just feel like we're kind of going around the process a little bit.
But she's not an authority,
No, but she's working with the authorities.
so
Right, the
you,
question is why, I guess essentially this person's retired, why are we taking somebody off the bench and bringing them in with
we're
everybody
not.
who's already
He's
involved?
the community co-chair and has been actively involved in this REB for years, and he knows this environment. He's been working here, Josh. I mean,
I've
he knows
had an
that.
interaction with him, and you know my feelings on that, so.
I guess that's where I'm just a little confused. If he's been at the RAB meetings and been speaking and Eagle has heard, if there's these concerns, then, I mean, wouldn't the regulatory agency, I'm sorry, but wouldn't the state regulatory agency push that envelope with us in our permit? I mean, I guess I just don't know why I'm not understanding why we want to go around.
What is the push the envelope? Let me make sure I understand what you're inferring from this. What do you mean by push the envelope to the township? What does that mean? What
I don't
are
know
you
if I
seeing?
actually said push the envelope. did
Yeah,
I?
what does that mean?
Oh.
So your question is, why isn't Eagle telling us the information we
Well,
need to know?
I guess my question is we have RAB meetings, we have people that are there from Eagle, from the Air Force, from everything. If that has been presented at those RAB meetings and discussed, if those regulatory agencies, those experts are not pushing that forward, why would we do that?
Oh, because this presentation wasn't made at a RAB meeting
Okay, so where was it made?
to Eagle,
Okay,
at least.
but Eagle hasn't
And
brought it
also
to
to
us
the
and said,
now.
hey, we heard about this and we think we need to look into this? I mean, we haven't heard anything about that, have we?
It's one of the things that Eagle wanted to partner with us as a wish list of what we need to do. This is an issue that doesn't have anything to do with our permitting process for the lagoon system. This has to do with the sediment beds at the lagoon system, where years ago, when the Air Force was removing the foam from the firefighting foam, they were putting it into the sewer system, and it went into those infiltration beds, which is where when the water comes out of our wastewater treatment, it goes into those infiltration beds and then flows out to Clark's Marsh. The problem is those infiltration beds were saturated with PFAS over the years when the Air Force was spraying the foam on the base. A tremendous amount of that PFAS went into the lagoon system, then into those sediment beds. That was before anybody knew about PFAS. That is still there. And so when we're flushing 300,000 gallons a day water through that, it's continually pushing that into Clark's Marsh. And what Mr. Henry is pointing out is either the Air Force or Eagle has taken up this issue. And from my perspective, this should, if it is going to be a problem, it is a problem that the Air Force should fund, not the township.
Exactly.
So when we present it at the RAB meeting to the Air Force in front of Eagle is a kind of our point. Why are we skipping the RAB that's created to do that and bringing it here?
He
is
has
our
made
question.
this presentation to the Air Force. They have so far basically ignored it. So has Eagle. He's made the presentation to both parties. He just wanted to make this board aware of what the problem is, and he has an immense amount of information and knowledge about this. I mean, he worked on the base area here for 20 years. He knows this area like the back of his hand, and this is a problem that he recognized, brought it to Eagle, brought it to the Air Force. So far, neither one of those have made any steps, positive steps to do anything with it. And
But those are the
point
ones who would make those steps. What would we do?
And Josh, they won't until they're pushed.
Yeah, they're not going to tell us.
So they're just not
walk
going
us-
to do it.
Well,
Let's
your
get-
pushing is in that RAB or meeting.
That's right.
I mean, aside from this,
And-
there's issues with
And we
the
have a
owner.
representative for the RAB.
Yep.
And from what I'm hearing, the representative from the RAB is wanting to share information that he knows with the board. I, for one, want to hear about it. Because there is a
I
long
think it
laundry
should be
list that needs to be
presented to the
taken
RAB.
care of the Air Force.
And we don't have any data with it, which is why we turned it down last time.
We do. We've heard about this before, but we haven't been presented with a lot of data yet. We've just been told. There was tests that occurred, if I remember correctly, Bill, this goes back a few years, back in the prior board, when we talked about exactly what you had just mentioned about the PFAS in the beds. But there was a lot we didn't know then. If I remember correctly, I don't even think we had measured it at that point, or we didn't know what the numbers were. We don't know as a board. And I'm asking to have this presentation presented to this board so this board can be informed.
Does he have numbers though?
Of course he does.
And where did those get collected from?
Well, since then, there's been measurements.
So is that Eagle working on it?
I don't know who did the measurement, whether that was the Air
I'm just
Force or
saying,
not.
it seems you're kind of circumventing it to take it from RAB. If nothing's happening there, why isn't it being pressed at
The
the
RAB is not the
versus
purpose that
bringing
you
it to us?
understand, Josh. I think you're confused. The RAB's purpose is for us to approach the Air Force about what is happening on the base. The water treatment was given to us. We got that. That's ours now. That makes it our liability. The Air Force isn't going to advise you.
Right, but
It's
we
time
get
for us to
approval.
stand
Has
No, but
Eagle
yeah,
not
I
checked
say
that
Eagle
lagoon?
is.
Eagle, does that matter? Here's the point.
Well, it
Are you
does.
gonna
It's
wait
much
for-
like the
are
CPA
you going to
reviewed
be
our
a-
books.
are you-
We rely on
Do
it.
you want to
speak
be
at a time.
ahead of the issue, or do you want to be behind it? Because if Eagle decides that they're going to tell you it's a problem, do you think they're going to tell it to you in a way that's a small memo in an email?
Well,
Or
so
is it going
again,
to come down as a
Jeremy's point,
violation?
it seems you're trying to bring it to us for some kind of action. And that's
I'm
kind
only-
of where we're at. What is it being brought here for? You're saying no action's being
Information.
taken, now you want to hear is information.
So if we
No,
hear it as
I said
informational, what would be the
action to be-
point?
I'm
What
so
would we
sorry,
do
Ann,
with
let me
that?
finish with him.
Okay.
So the point here, Josh, is I'm asking for action to put it on the agenda for the 22nd. That's the action I asked for. That's it. I don't know what other action you're referring to.
Well, he's then asking, so if you put it on the agenda for a presentation,
sure.
you're now putting information out there
Correct.
that has, it sounds like, been shared with two different entities, one of which is our regulatory agency, and then the other sits with the RAB for our cleanup measures. So what is the goal then of presenting it to us if neither one of those agencies have done anything? So you're then going to be asking the township board, it sounds like, to take an affirmative action towards these two groups. Is that what you're, I mean, is that the goal?
Affirmative action
Or some kind,
toward the two
something?
groups. No, I wasn't asking that to do
I
that
mean, what
at
is
all.
the goal of doing the presentation?
Well, we've never put anybody in charge of actually handling, strategizing how this township is going to deal with this contamination. We talked about it in the past. We've had different folks who've come in, and we thought we might actually engage different outside consulting agencies in the past board, but that never really went anywhere. And so there isn't anybody representing this township. Eagle doesn't represent us. The Air Force certainly doesn't represent us. The RAB does not represent us. We are a member at that board at a table to talk about the issue of the contamination, but the RAB does not come back and advise us. So I'm trying to get information to this board so that we, as a board, are educated on a topic that is very much our responsibility. We own that wastewater treatment plant.
I completely understand that we own the treatment facility. In the same sense, I have an issue, I guess, having a third party presenting information that is not backed by any type of, I don't know what the proper term would be, liability, anything, making a recommendation to us that then we're going to turn around and do something with, it sounds like. I just feel like that is not a good position, in my opinion, to put the township in. I feel that we have people in place to present that to, and based on their review, then they would make recommendations to us. I know we all like to, I mean, we all have relatives that are attorneys, we all have people that, do different things, but none of us are experts at this. And I don't want to be presented with information by whether or not that person is an expert retired expert from his field or not, he still has nothing backing him up besides his opinion and his previous work.
Which is pretty substantial.
Well, I guess that's neither here nor there in my mind. I'm
And
not
that man is
comfortable with
doing a
it.
lot for this township through his action with the Now Group
Well,
and elsewhere in this community, and, yeah, so.
I've heard him speak at the BRAC meetings. I mean, that was years ago. He's not short on
I'm not,
experience.
I'm
or
not,
information.
I've only heard him speak once in
not
the
dismissing
township,
his,
and that was
his
enough for me.
expertise. I'm just saying that he's,
I just feel like we're circumventing the process that we have with Tammy, with her, with working with the people, with our attorneys, with Eagle, with other people that are looking out for the township's best interests in this whole thing. So I feel that's kind of going around her authority, honestly.
I don't think that anybody is looking out for our best interest, to be frank and honest. I mean, and I don't mean any slander or libel against a group like Now. I mean, for this township, we have not hired anybody to represent us on this topic. Our attorney's not reviewing a contract
right.
from someone.
Well, I guess the
They're not.
question is, does our attorney feel like we need to be doing that?
What contract?
I think
would
it's
they
our
be
job
reviewing?
to
What are you talking
understand
about?
all the potential liability that we have.
Well, again, that would
think
be
that's
for Tammy to look into and report back.
I don't
to
even
us.
think it's
I think-
Tammy's to look into. I mean,
It's this board.
I just have, I'm sorry, but I don't think that bringing in a third party at this time is a good idea. But that being said, you are making a request, so I think that you should make a motion asking for that proposal to be put on the agenda, and then we vote on it.
Actually, I don't even think there needs to be a motion. Any board member can ask for an item to be on the agenda.
As
So,
long as there's backup
there doesn't-
material that goes with it.
Right.
The gentleman will be here. So, Jim, would you like a motion, or you just
I
want to
was,
put it on the
I was going to
agenda?
make it formal, so that's fine. That way there was no one felt that there was anything being snuck in. All right, I move that on the next board meeting of August 22nd, that we include in the agenda a slot for Mark Henry to make a presentation about the influence of the water treatment plant discharge on PFAS in Clark's Marsh.
I'll support.
Okay, there's a motion by Mr. Cummings and support by Mr. Westerbarth to add that presentation. Are you wanting that like at the beginning, kind of like the audit
I
presentation
don't
in that
think it
way, or?
matters. I don't
Okay.
think it matters. We certainly
I'm
could.
just thinking for like a time allotment or something like that.
Doesn't need action if it's at the presentation.
No.
I'm sorry.
It doesn't require any action by the board if it's at the presentation portion.
Well, we're asking to put it on the agenda, Steve, so yes.
What I'm trying to
asking whether you'd
clarify,
like it.
and if anybody's looking for action to come out of it, it's just going to be a presentation.
Correct.
To the
Okay.
board. So the proper place to put it is at the beginning of the agenda before a consent agenda.
Which
That's
would
my
be
only
in
point
the
I was trying to
presentation
make.
section.
Yes.
Okay, that's what I said.
It's still the agenda. No, I don't.
Yeah, it's on the agenda in the presentation section where you allow a certain amount of time.
I agree.
So it's not on as an action item from there, it's on as a presentation.
Understood. That's
Okay.
correct. That's fine.
Just wanting to clarify that that's what you want.
Yep.
Okay, so there's a motion for Mr. Cummings, support by Mr. Westerbarth, to put on the August 22nd agenda before consent agenda under presentations. Roll call, please.
Mr. Palmer?
Yes.
Mr. Sutton, no. Mr. Wusterbarth?
Yes.
Ms. McGuire?
Nope.
Mr. Spencer?
Yes.
Mr. Cummings?
Yes.
Ms. Richards?
No. Motion carried. Okay, moving on then to the second public comment section on the agenda. Again, this is the second public comment section. You do not need a card to fill out, or you didn't need a card to fill out, sorry, and it doesn't need to be an agenda item. You are limited to 4 minutes. And you need to come to the podium. I'm going to start on the far left, my far left. Anybody in the far left? You're not looking at me, and I went blank on your first name. Sorry.
Nope, she said no.
June, sorry, okay. But nobody there? Okay, I'm in the middle section. If you'd like to come up for comment, raise your hand, okay? Please step to the podium. And then remember, when you go to the podium, to state your name.
I don't think I've ever been up here with these on at the same time.
Okay.
Nancy Roy, and I just would like to request an update on the FERTAW meeting results from last summer, 2021. We've waited 12 months and still have not had that presented to the public. And the taxpayers, I'm sure, would like the results of those 3 meetings. We went through the effort of having them and getting the input. It would be nice to hear what came out of that, what kind of results. We have not lost interest in the Paul Bunyan Furtaw Park, and we would like to request this be put on the agenda. It could be the next meeting on August 22nd or the one in September. And do I need to put that request in writing?
No, we can take that. I mean, you
Okay.
could send an email as well if you like.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. That's it. Okay, anybody else in the middle? Kathy?
Wow is all I can say. I just stood up here at the beginning of the meeting and explained all of the answers, gave you the answers to all of the questions you just asked. Use the chain of command, use the person on the RAB. The U.S. Air Force is the polluter. We do not look to them to figure out what we need to do for our properties. We find the answer. If you haven't noticed, the Now Group and all of these experts that I've referred to, we have to tell Eagle what to do. They are sitting back, just, they're taking, they have all these other communities in Michigan that they have to deal with. We have to lead them. You have to lead them. You cannot sit by and wait for someone else to do this. I am so disappointed in the conversation that I just heard tonight. It was a slap in the face to me personally that you didn't hear a single word that I said this earlier, and to this community. You are not standing up and fighting. You just showed that you cannot be united. I am sickened by that behavior. You guys need to get it together, and I'm sick of it. I told you I was putting you on notice, and an hour later, you did this. Just sickened. Get it together, guys. That man right there is your RAB representative. He is the one that is going to talk to you about what the Air Force is, the communication. Mark Henry has been on this site since 1994. 28 years. And you're looking around for who the expert is? It is that man and Bob Delaney. And if you don't listen to him, then we have more problems in this township than I can even think of.
Thank you.
Get your act together, guys.
Hear, hear.
All right. Anybody else in the middle section? Okay, in the third section. Anybody have public comment? No? Okay. That's wrapping up public comment. Now on to board comment. Do we have any board comment this evening? I'll look to the right this time since I started with the left for the audit presentation.
No, thank you.
No? Anybody?
Nope.
I have to say, I'm disappointed, along with Kathy. It surprised me that this board wouldn't want information, which is all this is. So I'm glad it passed. I think you will be impressed with the information that Mr. Henry has to present to us. It isn't something we have to take action on. It's simply information about what could affect the township in regard to our lagoon system in the future that could cost us money, a lot of money. And we need to be ahead of that ball. So that's all.
I'll second those remarks. I'm disappointed in that conversation that we wouldn't even want to hear the information as a board. I'm so glad it passed. Secondly, I attended a Senate meeting, actually a remote hearing with the Homeland Security and Government Affairs with Senator Peters. 2 panels. One was the government experts who were actually working on the RAB and with the RAB to clean up the base. The second part was affected citizens and servicemen and women and the NOW group. I'm very proud of the local representatives that we have. It's not only local, but it's nationwide, that are spending time and resources flying to these types of hearings to get on record with the United States Senate on the issues that we have in this township. And I would implore this board to go on YouTube or the government channel and pull up that hearing. You might learn something. Secondly, it's Rockfest this weekend. It's a total charity event. It's going to be held at the Veterans Memorial Park. Not a penny goes to the organization of the committee. It's all taken care of by our sponsors and ticket sales. Please support the event if you can, because every penny of profit goes towards the Veterans Memorial to maintain that and improve that property. So that's my comments.
Nothing.
Okay, all right. I guess I just wanted, Nancy, Roy made a request, and actually I've asked that same question numerous times, so I would like to formally ask that we get I don't know if it was already given to the EIC board or not, but there should be, and it just actually reminded me on my Facebook feed, because I had sent out an invitation people to go to Warrior Pavilion to do those, community outreach. We have not gotten anything back. So I don't know if that's been presented to the EIC board or not, but this board has not gotten the results. So I am formally asking that we get those results back, please.
I gotta know.
For the next agenda?
For the next agenda. All right, thank you. And again, I'm sorry, Kathy, that you feel the way that you do. I am very appreciative of the unbelievable amount of time that you and your group have provided to this community on the behalf of all the citizens. I disagree in regard to some of the ways that we go about it, but I am very appreciative of everything that you've done. So again, we'll see what is on the agenda next time for the presentation, and we will go from there. So with that, I will make a motion to adjourn at 8:57.